I still remember the first time I saw him, sitting alone in that massive playroom, surrounded by toys that cost more than most people's cars, yet completely unreachable. His name was Ethan, 8 years old, with dark curls that fell across his forehead and eyes that seemed to look right through you into some distant world only he could see. The silence in that room was deafening. His mother, Sarah Montgomery, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country, had just hired me as their new household manager. But as I stood in the doorway watching this beautiful boy rock back and forth, completely disconnected from everything around him, I realized this wasn't going to be about managing a household at all. Before we continue with Ethan's incredible journey, if you believe in the power of love and patience to change lives, please hit that like button and subscribe. This story will challenge everything you think you know about autism, wealth, and what children truly need to thrive. Now let's dive into how one woman's simple acts of love transformed a silent boy's entire world. The mansion was everything you'd imagine. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, rooms that echoed with emptiness despite being filled with expensive furniture. But money, as I would soon learn, couldn't buy the one thing Ethan desperately needed. "He doesn't speak," Sarah told me that first day, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. She stood in her home office, immaculate in a designer suit, but her eyes betrayed the exhaustion of years of fighting a battle she didn't know how to win. "He's never spoken. Not a single word in 8 years." "What have the doctors said?" I asked gently. Sarah's laugh was bitter. "What haven't they said? Non-verbal autism spectrum disorder, severe communication delays, sensory processing issues. I've taken him to specialists in New York, London, Switzerland, the best money can buy." She paused, turning to look out the window at the sprawling grounds. "But nothing changes. He sits in his room, or the playroom, and he's just not here. Not really. May I spend some time with him?" I asked. She looked at me with something between hope and skepticism. "You're not a therapist, Emily." "No," I agreed. "But I'm here, and sometimes that's what matters most." I found Ethan exactly where I'd left him, in the same position, rocking slightly. His hands flapped occasionally by his sides, a self-soothing behavior I recognized. Around him were educational tablets, therapy toys, sensory items that probably cost thousands of dollars. None of them were being used. I didn't try to touch him or get in his space. Instead, I simply sat down on the floor across from him, far enough away not to intrude, close enough to be present. "Hi, Ethan," I said softly. "My name is Emily. I'm going to be spending time here, and I'd really like to get to know you." No response. His eyes remained fixed on some point beyond me. I didn't expect one. "I know the world probably feels really loud sometimes," I continued, keeping my voice low and steady, "and really confusing. But I want you to know that I'm not going to push you or rush you. We'll just be together, okay?" I stayed there for an hour that first day. Didn't try to make him play, didn't try to force interaction. I simply hummed quietly and occasionally described what I saw in the room, narrating in a gentle, rhythmic way that I hoped might be soothing rather than overwhelming. When I finally left, Ethan was in the exact same position, but for just a moment, so brief I might have imagined it, his eyes flickered toward me. Over the next few weeks, I established a routine. Every morning at 9, I would sit with Ethan. Sometimes I brought books and read aloud. Sometimes I brought simple objects, a smooth stone, a soft piece of fabric, and just held them, letting him observe if he chose to. Sarah watched these sessions with increasing frustration. "He needs more than this," she said one evening, cornering me in the kitchen. He needs intensive therapy, structured interventions. You're just sitting there. I'm building trust, I replied calmly. Ethan has spent his whole life being assessed, tested, pushed through programs. He needs someone who doesn't want anything from him except to be with him. That's not going to make him speak. Sarah's voice rose, and I saw the desperation underneath her anger. I've given him everything. The best therapists, the most advanced treatments. Why isn't it enough? I met her eyes steadily. Because he doesn't need more things, Sarah. He needs time. He needs patience. He needs someone to be present without an agenda. She turned away, but not before I saw tears glisten in her eyes. I don't have time, she whispered. The company, the board meetings, the constant travel. I'm drowning, Emily, and I can't even reach my own son. Then maybe, I said gently, that's what needs to change. The breakthrough began not with words, but with food. I'd noticed that Ethan's diet consisted mainly of processed snacks, things that were easy for the previous staff to grab and leave for him. Chicken nuggets, crackers, fruit pouches. Nothing fresh, nothing vibrant. I'd like to change what Ethan eats, I told Sarah. She looked up from her laptop, distracted. Whatever you think is best, his therapists have never mentioned diet as an issue. But I'd done my research. I knew that gut health affected brain function, that certain nutrients supported neural development, that food dyes and preservatives could exacerbate behavioral issues in sensitive children. So I started small. The first morning I brought Ethan fresh strawberries. I didn't try to make him eat them. I simply placed the bowl nearby, where he could see the bright red fruit, and began eating one myself. I said, genuine in my appreciation. These are so sweet and juicy. Ethan's rocking slowed slightly. His eyes, though still not meeting mine, shifted toward the bowl. I ate another strawberry, slowly, letting him observe the process. Then I moved the bowl a tiny bit closer to him and went back to reading my book aloud. 20 minutes later, Ethan's hand crept out. His fingers touched a strawberry, exploring its texture. He brought it close to his face, examining it. And then, miracle of small miracles, he took a bite. I kept reading as if nothing monumental had just happened, but my heart was soaring. Over the following weeks, I introduced more fresh foods, blueberries rich in antioxidants, avocados full of healthy fats, wild-caught salmon loaded with omega-3s that supported brain health, spinach, sweet potatoes, nuts, seeds. Every meal became an opportunity not just for nutrition, but for gentle, no-pressure interaction. And slowly, Ethan began to engage more with his environment. It was Sarah who first noticed the change in his eyes. He's more alert, she said one morning, watching through the doorway as Ethan and I sorted colorful blocks by color. He wasn't speaking, but he was participating, his hands moving with more purpose than I'd ever seen. Good food, good sleep, time outside in natural light, and patient interaction, I said. It's not magic. It's just giving his body and mind what they need to function optimally. The doctors never mentioned any of this, Sarah said, something like bitterness in her voice. Because our medical system is set up to treat symptoms with interventions and medications, I replied carefully. Not to address foundational health. And because these things take time, the one thing that can't be bought. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then, teach me. What? Teach me what you're doing. I want to. I need to connect with my son. So began a different kind of transformation. I showed Sarah how to sit with Ethan without expectations, how to follow His lead rather than direct him. How to create space for him to emerge at his own pace. It was excruciating for her at first. Sarah was used to controlling outcomes, to setting goals and achieving them through sheer force of will. Sitting quietly while her son played without acknowledging her presence went against every instinct she had. But she tried. I'll never forget the afternoon when Ethan, unprompted, unexpected, rolled a ball toward his mother. Sarah froze, tears streaming down her face. "What do I do?" she whispered. "Roll it back," I said softly, gently, and smile. She did. Her hands trembled as she pushed the ball back across the floor. Ethan watched it roll. Then, after a long pause, he rolled it back again. Sarah sobbed openly, but she kept playing. Back and forth, back and forth. This simple game that represented everything she'd longed for. Connection with her child. When Ethan finally lost interest and wandered off, Sarah turned to me with a face transformed by wonder. "He played with me. He actually played with me." "He did," I confirmed, smiling. "He really did." The changes accelerated after that. With better nutrition, more outdoor time, consistent loving attention, and reduced pressure, Ethan began emerging from his shell in ways that stunned even me. His therapists reported increased engagement in sessions. His eye contact, while still fleeting, happened more frequently. He began to explore toys with curiosity, rather than simply lining them up or ignoring them. And then, 3 months into my time with the Montgomerys, came the moment that changed everything. We were in Ethan's room, Sarah having joined us for our afternoon routine. I was showing Ethan how to make faces in the mirror, something I'd been working on for weeks, trying to help him recognize and practice expressions. "Look, Ethan," I said, pointing to my reflection. "This is happy." I smiled widely. He watched, his expression neutral. "Can you try?" I asked, knowing he wouldn't, but asking anyway because sometimes the asking itself plants seeds. To my shock, Ethan's lips twitched. Then, slowly, uncertainly, they curved upward. He was smiling. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. "Oh my God, he's smiling." But that wasn't all. Ethan turned from the mirror to look at his mother. Really look at her, meeting her eyes directly for the first time in his life. And then, in a voice rough from years of disuse, he spoke. "Mum." The word was barely more than a whisper, but it thundered through the room with the force of a miracle. Sarah collapsed to her knees, pulling Ethan into her arms. He stiffened initially. He still didn't like unexpected touch. But then, incredibly, he relaxed into the hug. "You spoke," Sarah sobbed. "My beautiful boy, you spoke." "Mom," Ethan said again, clearer this time, as if testing the word, finding its shape in his mouth. I backed away quietly, giving them space for this sacred moment, tears streaming down my own face. Later that evening, after Ethan was asleep, Sarah found me in the kitchen. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You've given me my son back." "He was always here," I replied gently. "He just needed someone to meet him where he was, instead of trying to pull him to where we thought he should be." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been a terrible mother." "No," I said firmly. "You've been a mother who was trying everything you knew how to do. You love him." That was never the question. But I wasn't here. Not really. I threw money at the problem instead of giving him what he actually needed. She paused, wiping her eyes. "I'm selling the company." I blinked in surprise. "What?" "Not all of it, but I'm stepping down as CEO, reducing my board commitments, restructuring my life." She looked at me with fierce determination. Because you're right. Time can't be bought, and I've already lost 8 years of my son's life to ambition and fear. I won't lose any more. Sarah, I was scared, she admitted. Scared that if I couldn't fix him with resources and experts, then I was powerless. It was easier to outsource his care than to face my own helplessness. But you showed me that the helplessness was the point. That being present in the not knowing, in the slow progress, in the small moments, that's where the real connection happens. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Thank you for seeing my son, and for helping me learn to see him too. The changes in the Montgomery household over the next 6 months were profound. Sarah restructured her entire life around being present. She learned Ethan's routines, his preferences, his unique way of processing the world. She sat with him every morning and evening, following the patterns I'd established, building on the foundation of trust and patience. And Ethan flourished. His vocabulary grew slowly but steadily. By month 4, he was using simple phrases. Want snack. Go outside. Play ball. By month 6, he was constructing full sentences and asking questions. Why is the sky blue? He asked one afternoon, his voice still soft but growing more confident. Sarah's face lit up with joy. Because of the way sunlight scatters in the atmosphere, she explained, then looked at me with wonder. He's curious. He wants to understand things. He always did, I said. He just couldn't express it before. The physical changes were remarkable too. With consistent nutrition and plenty of outdoor activity, Ethan's entire body seemed more grounded, more present. His movements became more purposeful, less agitated. He slept better, smiled more, engaged more readily with the world around him. His therapy team was astounded. We've never seen progress like this, his speech therapist told Sarah during a progress meeting. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We're just loving him, Sarah said simply, and giving him time. But it wasn't always smooth. There were still hard days. Days when the world felt too loud for Ethan, when he would retreat into himself, when words wouldn't come no matter how hard he tried. Days when Sarah's old instincts would resurface, when she'd want to push for more progress, faster results. On one particularly difficult afternoon, when Ethan had spent hours in a meltdown over a change in routine, Sarah came to me in tears. I can't do this, she said. I thought we were past this. I thought he was getting better. He is getting better, I said firmly. But autism doesn't disappear, Sarah. He's not broken and in need of fixing. He's neurodivergent, and some days will always be harder than others. The progress isn't about making him neurotypical. It's about giving him the tools and support to navigate his own unique neurological landscape. But he was doing so well, and he still is. One hard day doesn't erase 6 months of growth. You need to adjust your expectations. This isn't a linear journey to some finish line where Ethan will suddenly be normal. This is about helping him become the fullest, happiest version of himself, which might look very different from what you initially imagined. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. You're right. I was doing it again, putting my expectations on him instead of accepting him as he is. The fact that you can recognize that is growth too, I pointed out gently. She smiled slightly. I guess we're both learning, aren't we? Every day, I agreed. As we approached the 1-year anniversary of my arrival at the Montgomery house, I noticed Ethan doing something I'd never seen before. He was in the playroom with a younger child, the daughter of Sarah's assistant, who sometimes brought her to work. And Ethan was sharing his toys. More than that, he was playing with her, taking turns, responding to her babbled conversation with his own simple words. When she fell and started crying, he looked confused, but then patted her shoulder awkwardly, his version of comfort. "He's developing empathy," Sarah said beside me, her voice thick with emotion. "He's connecting with another child." "He's been practicing connection with you," I said. "Now he's generalizing that skill." We watched as Ethan carefully handed the little girl a block, his face serious, but his eyes bright with engagement. "I never thought I'd see this," Sarah whispered. "I spent so many years just hoping he'd speak. The idea that he might have friends, relationships, a full life, I didn't even dare to dream that big." "He's still Ethan," I reminded her. "He'll always process things differently, need different supports than neurotypical children. But different doesn't mean less. It just means different." "I know," Sarah said, "and I love him exactly as he is." That evening, after Ethan was asleep, Sarah called me into her study. "I have something I need to tell you," she said, looking nervous. My heart sank. "You're letting me go." "What? No!" Sarah looked horrified. "God, no. Emily, you've changed our lives. I'm asking if you'll stay permanently. Not as a housekeeper or a maid or whatever we initially called your position, but as, I don't even know what to call it. A nanny doesn't capture it. Neither does therapist or teacher. A friend?" I suggested softly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, a friend. To both of us. But I also want to fund something through you." She pulled out a folder and handed it to me. Inside were plans for a center, a place where parents of autistic children could learn the approaches I'd used with Ethan. Not a therapy center focused on making children normal, but a support center focused on helping families connect, understand, and love their neurodiverse children. "I want to call it Ethan's Place," Sarah said, "and I want you to run it. We can help other families learn what you taught us, that sometimes the most powerful intervention isn't a medical treatment or an expensive therapy. Sometimes it's just patience, presence, and unconditional love." I looked at the plans through blurry eyes. "Sarah, this is incredible. You gave me my son back," she said simply. "Let's help other parents find their children too." 6 months later, Ethan's Place opened its doors. It wasn't like other autism centers. There were no fluorescent lights or clinical white walls. Instead, there were soft spaces with natural lighting, quiet rooms for overwhelm, gardens for outdoor exploration, and kitchens where families learned about nutrition's role in neurological health. But more than the physical space, we created a community. Parents learned not just strategies for managing behaviors, but how to shift their entire mindset about what autism meant. We taught them to look for their children's strengths instead of focusing solely on deficits. We showed them how small, consistent acts of connection could transform relationships. And we never ever suggested that the goal was to make autistic children normal. The goal was to help them thrive as exactly who they were. Ethan came with us on opening day. At 9 years old, he was still quiet compared to his peers, still needed supports and understanding, still had days when the world was too much, but he was also joyful, curious, connected, and most miraculously of all, he was present. He stood beside his mother as she cut the ribbon, and when she finished her speech about the importance of patience and love, he tugged on her sleeve. "Can I say something?" he asked, his voice carrying clearly through the microphone. Sarah looked shocked, but handed him the mic with trembling hands. Ethan looked out at the crowd of parents, many with their own autistic children, many carrying the same fear and exhaustion Sarah had worn when I first met her. "My name is Ethan," he said slowly, carefully. "And I'm autistic, that's okay. My mum loves me, Emily loves me, and I'm happy." There wasn't a dry eye in the place. After the ceremony, a mother approached me, her non-verbal daughter clutching her hand. "Is it real?" she asked desperately. "The progress you describe, is it really possible?" I knelt down to the little girl's level, not making eye contact, just being present in her space. "Every child is different," I said honestly, "and progress looks different for everyone. But I can promise you this. If you show up with patience and love, if you meet your daughter where she is instead of where you think she should be, if you focus on connection over correction, yes, transformation is possible. Maybe not in the ways you expect, maybe not on the timeline you hope for, but possible, always." The mother started crying. "I just want to know my daughter." "Then let go of who you think she should be," I said gently, "and discover who she actually is. She's right here, waiting to be seen." That night, Sarah, Ethan, and I sat together in the garden of Ethan's Pletz, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Emily?" Ethan said quietly. "Yes, buddy?" "Thank you for being patient with me." My throat tightened. "Oh, Ethan. Thank you for teaching me what patience really means." He leaned against my shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that would have been impossible a year ago. Sarah reached over and took my hand, her eyes shining. "I spent years thinking wealth could solve everything," she said softly. "I bought the best therapies, the most advanced treatments, the top specialists. But none of it worked because I was trying to buy a solution to something that couldn't be purchased. Love can't be bought. Patience can't be scheduled. Connection can't be outsourced." She looked at her son, now pointing excitedly at a bird in the tree above us. "You showed me that the most valuable things, the things that actually transform lives, are the ones we give freely: our time, our presence, our unconditional acceptance." "Look, Mom," Ethan called out. "A cardinal. It's red like strawberries." Sarah laughed, the sound full of pure joy. "Just like strawberries, baby." I watched them together, this mother and son who had found each other, despite the barriers, despite the fear, despite everything the world said was impossible. And I thought about all the families we would meet at Ethan's place, all the parents who would walk through those doors carrying the same desperation Sarah once wore, all the beautiful, unique children who just needed someone to see them, really see them, without judgment or expectations. The work was just beginning. But if Ethan's transformation had taught me anything, it was this: love, when given patiently and unconditionally, has the power to move mountains. One small, patient moment at a time. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of patience and unconditional love, please share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more stories of hope, transformation, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Leave a comment below, telling us about your own journey with autism, neurodiversity, or learning to see the children in your life for who they truly are. Your story matters, your struggle matters, and you are not alone. Together, we can build a world that celebrates all kinds of minds and recognizes that different doesn't mean less. It just means different. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing that love can change everything.